Good evening and welcome to the Trading the Tech Show. Where I am, it is Friday, October 16th, 2020. So I hope everybody had a good day. I hope that you were able to find some trading opportunities based on our show yesterday. We have quite a few charts to go over tonight, so we'll go over all of the charts and we'll see what opportunities there are for now, considering today is Thursday and we're going into Friday. Some of those, for those of you that are manual traders who may not want to actually trade into the weekend or hold positions in the weekend, this might be the point where you're kind of paring down your positions and kind of closing things out. But for those of us that do trade through the weekend or not, not too adverse to that, to the risk of that, then, we still may find some setups here. So either way, enjoy the show and, get your journals out and write down what you see. And kind of pick and choose the opportunities that may be good for you. Now, so we're going to start here on the Aussie CAD. We'll start at the beginning. We're looking at the Aussie CAD on the 30-minute chart. We have trend to the downside. We did have trend to the downside yesterday as well when we were speaking. So now we've got trend to the downside, but we see that the rate had pushed up to the 50, didn't get quite too far over the 50. So what I see now is pretty much consolidation and trading to the right. Now, the momentum that I think we'll get is going to be to the downside. So even though there might be some movement up here past the 50 again, and maybe past the 100, generally underneath the 720, we've got strength to the downside. So we'll be looking for continued push to the downside once we actually, retreat maybe back into the 50 or the 100 EMA. Our stochastic here is down below 20. We've got a portion of it down below 20, and then we've got a portion just a little above 20, but we're in the bottom half of the stochastic. So what that's telling me is that we still may have some downside here. We really haven't turned up on the stochastic yet. So anytime we're hanging out here down below 20, then that's indication of a stronger trend as well, that there's still strength there. So we haven't kind of left that area. So I feel like there's still strength in the move downward. As far as the Aussie yen, looking at it on this 30-minute chart, we have the same thing. We've got full trend actually to the downside. So we're just waiting to see if this will continue. Now we did bounce here, so there's possibility of a breakout bounce trade here as well. We came down, we bounced off of this low here. Let's see, let's put the crosshair on it. The low area right around the 74.23 area. And then we bounced from there. So right now we haven't broken that low. We haven't broken the previous low. So we'd be looking at an opportunity here in between, say somewhere, let's put our crosshair back on it again. Maybe as a high area, 74.72 or so. And then maybe as a low area, maybe somewhere here, 74.60 or so. So between 74.60 and 74.72 might be our kind of entry location for a breakout bounce trade to the upside. That is very, very possible. So that's another type of strategy that we can use in order to gain some pips. So, but just remember that would be against the overall trend that we see currently. So it doesn't mean it can't happen, but it is against the overall trend. Because with the breakout bounce, we're looking at the previous low, then we bounce, we go around back towards that low. If we don't break it, we tend to trade off to the upside, right? As far as the Aussie New Zealand, kind of the same thing. We've got trend to the downside, full trend actually. The 21 and the 50 are very, very close here. So we're just not that wide at this point in time. So I'd be mindful of that too. We haven't widened out yet. So the only time I'm really going to be interested is if we pull back past maybe this 100 or pretty far past the 50, enough to get us give us space enough to put our pending short order here. So I do respect that we're under the 720. I do respect the trend that we were in, and that technically we still basically are in. But we're just waiting to see what happens here. So we can see kind of the same thing as the Aussie CAD. We did get this low, then we bounced from that low. And so far we haven't, met the low or even really tested the low at this point in time. So we may actually trade off to the upside. As far as the Aussie US here, we had wide open trend. We've got wide open trend actually to the downside. We still have it. We did create a low once again, and then we bounced around. We didn't test that low, and now we may actually push up again past this, at least the 21, and maybe back at least to the 50. So let's see what happens there. It may continue on. It may continue on from there. So this is kind of like breakout bounce, but I normally like to see a deeper dip. I like to kind of see it really come down and test the previous low before I really call it a breakout bounce, because I like to see it really get down here, kind of confirm that traders don't want to go past that point. So, I just like to see a little bit deeper dive, but we may still get it. Who knows? We're still in trend to the downside. We've still got our moving averages all in order. We're underneath the 720. So my expectation is a continued move to the downside. If it changes, it changes, but that's the expectation. As far as the CAD yen, we have trend to the downside. It's very, very new. We got a little bit back here, but our 200 was still above the 720. And by the time we broke the 720, our rate was kind of headed back up and our moving averages were headed up. So we had it for a very short time here. But here is different. This is a different story. This is a young trend that's really kind of beginning, a young kind of setup that's beginning. So we're going to look for pullbacks past the 50 and the 100 before we're interested in going short or setting our pending short order. Now we do have a low that was created here. This low is right around the 79.44 area. And we bounced from that, and we did kind of come around. We got close because we tested down here around 79.50 or so. So we got really close, within about 10 pips. So I feel more comfortable about this as a breakout bounce than I would about the other ones. The other ones really didn't test much. This one came down and retreated most of the previous move, right? If we throw a Fibonacci, on it, a retracement, we can see how much of the move actually was retraced. And it was more than the 61.8%, right? So anytime we get more than maybe like that 61.8%, that makes more sense to me as far as like a breakout bounce, because we really, really recovered, from the move up. We actually came down, and now, we may not get as far as this 100%, but we at least made a valiant effort towards it. So that's why I would be interested maybe in that one as a breakout bounce, as opposed to the others. It's a little bit better setup for a breakout bounce than what I would, what I saw in the other Aussies. So for this one, we're waiting on pullbacks past the 50 and past the 100 before we'd be interested in a short. Now, as far as our Swiss yen, we're just starting to get trend. I guess we just kind of got trend to the downside here. It's not very wide. We've been trading off to the right in this narrow kind of channel to the right here. The bottom of it is kind of where the price is right now, about 115.06 or so, 115.05 kind of area. And then the top is where this 720 is just riding across the top. But it just kind of naturally just drew a channel there. So, and that's about 115 in the 20s area, 115.20 or so. So we're talking between 115.06 and 115.20. There's not a whole lot of pips, but we're just kind of bouncing back and forth in that area. So if I'm looking at trading here, I'm below my 720. I've got trend kind of setting up to the downside, even though the 200 is not over the 720 yet, or below it anyway. So if I'm looking maybe to short as we pull back past maybe up to the 720, past the 50 and the 100, which is sitting right next to the 720 right now. So that's where I would be interested in shorting from. Right. As far as the Euro Aussie goes, I've got trend to the upside. I've got a full trend to the upside here. All of the moving averages are in order. All we're really looking for is a pullback past our 50 or our 100, and then we're looking at a move, a continued move to the upside. Our stochastic here is above 50. We're flirting with the 80 mark here as well on the stochastic. So we're going to be watching that. This is one that I'd keep on my radar. It's not quite set up yet. It's not pulled back yet enough for us to be interested yet. It did kind of pull back here to the 50. We could have dropped in order on this 21 and been profitable now. That's a good move for us, right? As far as the Euro CAD goes, we've got our moving averages kind of turning up now. So we've got our 100, our 50, our 21, and our 8 all turned up. We haven't crossed over the 50 or the 100 over the 200 yet. So this is, we're still underneath, rate is still underneath the 720. So this is one where I feel like we might drop our short orders here on the 50 on the 50 in blue or the 100 here in yellow. We could even drop it here on this 200 as well, because we'd be improving our price just a little bit. So I would say, if rate is going to continue in this downward trend, and this is just a pullback against it, then we could catch those pips on the way down. So that would be my order spot. So this one I'd probably keep on the radar for sure. Euro CAD 30-minute chart, right? Now, Euro Swiss, we have trend to the downside. Our 8 did kind of jump a little bit over our 21, but in general, we have trend to the downside. So we're just really waiting for a pullback. We got a little bit above the 50 here, but we didn't get enough to really warrant us placing an order there for a short. So if I was going to do anything, I'd have to place it on the 21 for my short. If it's not going to really push back past the 50, then the 21 is my place to enter. And our stochastic down here below is below the 20 mark. So that's telling us that, we may actually get a continued move to the downside. Looking at the Euro Pound, we have the moving averages starting to head up. We're waiting now only on the 100 to jump over the 200 in order for us to have trend to the upside. Unfortunately, rate is below the 720. So in order for this 100 to jump over the 200, we're going to have rate probably jump over the 720. So we'll be mindful and watchful of that to see what happens there. We know that the pound got some pretty, not so good news. And then, we talked about it on our fundamentals show this morning, the daily market overview show. We talked about the fundamentals for Great Britain a little bit. And we saw that the Bank of England's, I think it was the president of the Bank of England made a speech, and he was talking about possibly going to negative rates or basically cutting rates again. He's basically saying it's on the table, but they're just waiting to see what happens, and they want everything to open before they do it. So just for the fact that he mentioned cutting rates, the pound is going to be a little bit soft for that reason alone. So the Euro Pound then, I don't imagine that it won't jump over the 720 if we continue that momentum. On the Euro Yen, we've got trend to the downside. It's kind of nice here. It's kind of nicely forming here. It's kind of gradual and not really, it's been really gradual, really a nice move down. It hasn't been something extremely volatile or, moving back and across a lot of pips. It's definitely just kind of stepping over and stepping down, stepping over, stepping down. So now we bounced just a little bit. We did hit the 50, and now we're kind of, down below the 8 again, and the 8 is below our 21. So we've got a wide open trend here. We'd really be looking for a pullback before, we would want to make our sell trade into this trend. So I would definitely keep that one on the line too. So we had a Euro CAD, we've got the Euro Yen, something we're looking at as well. And then we'd be keeping an eye on the Euro Pound as well. As far as the Euro New Zealand, right now rate is finding a floor here on the 720 or on the 720 moving average. It's finding a floor there. We only have the 21 and the 8 above it. We have rate above it. And now we're waiting on the 50, which is kind of looking like it wants to head that way and jump above the 720. But the 200 and the 100 are still in order to the downside. The 100 has not jumped over the 200 moving average yet. So we don't have trend to the upside, not just yet. So we're going to wait and see what happens here, because this could easily reverse on us, and we don't want to be caught in a trade just because we're a little bit early and we're kind of greedy and trying to make the charts give us what we want instead of reading what it's telling us. So the Euro New Zealand, that's pretty much off the docket, especially for a Thursday, because we're going into the weekend, and so there's not a lot of room for that to straighten out. We'll see if we get the momentum to do it tonight, but after that, there's not a lot of time left in the week for us to be able to get that to mature. Now, as far as the Euro US on the minute 30 chart, we do have rate underneath our 720. We do have trend to the downside. The 8 is just slightly jumping back over the 21. So our only play really here was off of the 50. The rate went back about to the 50. So if we had our trade, our order, our set for the 21, that would be the only option that we had at that point. And it would not have yielded too many pips just now, so we'd have to wait and see what happens. Now, we did get a catapult opportunity here, so we're going to show you that too. We've got our straddle candle here in red. It's interesting because we got a straddle candle here in red, then we got the second candle red here, and then we could have placed our order below, 10 pips below. Then we got another straddle candle here, and then the second candle was red, and we could have looked at the close and placed our opening order 10 pips below the close as well. So that would have been about 26 or so. And right now we're about 117.03, 04 right now. So there's a good about 20 pips that we would have gained. But we actually went down here to about 116 in the 116.80s. So there was a lot of pips to be gained there, and quite quickly too, just over a few hours. So this was a good trade as well. As far as the pound Aussie, we had trend to the upside, right? We've got trend to the upside. We've got rate above the 720. Our 200, 150 are all in order to the upside. So this is a great opportunity for us. Right now, we're trading below the 50 moving average. So we're going to see how that turns out. Our 21 is actually even below the 50. So that might not be the place for us to go ahead and drop our order just yet. But if we drop any further or get closer to this 100 again, then maybe I drop my order on this 50 for a buy and see if we get the momentum to the upside again. Very doable. Just we know that there's going to be some weakness in the pound, just from what we got as far as economic news or fundamental news. As far as the pound CAD goes, we've got this 720 coming across the top here, kind of formulating a nice resistance point here. It looked like it might be support at one point, but then it kind of turned into resistance, and then rate is below our 720 now. As far as the moving averages go, we are straightening out. We're basically in trend here because our 50 did poke out a little bit underneath our 100 here. So we're basically in trend to the downside, but you can see we're just consolidating to the right. And we're going to need the rate to pull back some in order for us to actually, take this short. That's not one I feel like it's gonna, maybe that might develop tonight, but do we really have enough time for it to totally develop? I'm not so sure about that. And then we've got the pound Swiss. Pound Swiss looks like the 200 just jumped underneath the 720. And then, so we've got full trend. It's very, very new. This trend is very, very new. So we'll see if it continues. Now we want the rate to jump back, of course, to our 50 or our 100 before we go placing orders on our 21, 50 or 100. We want it moving back. So we're going to let this kind of develop itself and then see if we get that pullback as the market exhausts, and then we can take it down even further. So we'll just have to watch and see kind of what happens with this and how it develops, because this trend is so young. We'll see what happens there. As far as the pound yen, we are below, rate is below the 720. We've got all of the moving averages in order except for the 200 being underneath the 720. Right now it's above. But we've got all of the others are in a wide open trend. So we're just waiting on pullbacks here too, to our 100 or to our to our 50. And then we can place orders on the next lowest moving average. As far as the pound US, we're kind of in the middle here because our 720 is in the middle. Our 200 or 100, they're an order to the downside, but they're still above the 720. And then we've got our 50, 21, and 8 below our 720 moving average. So we've got trend to the downside. We've got rate underneath the 720. And so we've setting up a downtrend, but we don't have a mature trend here. You know, we kind of got full trend, but we don't have a mature trend at this point in time. So we got to watch this because this pound, you know, can turn around on us. We're going to see if the news continues to push in way on the pound versus the dollar, but because definitely what we heard was not like the greatest news ever. So we're going to see if that continues to play out into something longer term, or if the pound kind of recovers from that and everybody just kind of assumes, you know, the worst because of like COVID. So we'll have to see. New Zealand CAD on this 30-minute chart, we are underneath our 720 here. We started to develop trend to the downside, and then we pushed away. Remember I talked about this real push away from the 50, number of pips away from the 50, and then it snaps back to the 50. So yeah, so that has occurred here on our New Zealand CAD. But right now, looking at it, we're underneath the 720, so we're looking really for short trades. We got a little bit past our 100, so if we were placing an order, we would have had our order placed here on the 50 or on this 21 for short. Okay. That might be an idea for us. I'd probably play that 21 as a short, as a speculative trade, not something that you know, I'm really worried about. I think it's probably a good idea for that trade. I think we have momentum in our favor. As far as the New Zealand Swiss, we've got rate below the 720. We've got all of our moving average pretty much in order, except for our 21 and our 8, which is kind of natural. So I don't really fret that too much because those need to cross in order for there to be the pullback that we're looking for. So we're going to be waiting to see if this will pull back to the 50. We haven't kind of got that yet. So we'll wait and see what happens there. Let's see here, New Zealand yen. On the New Zealand yen, we have full trend to the downside. We have mature trend to the downside. All of the moving averages, including the 720, are in order to the downside. So we're looking at momentum to the downside. Now, we did push back here. We didn't even push back to the 50. So the only option would have been to have our order on this 21 for a short. So all of these are pretty much brand new. All these New Zealand's seem to be, you know, newer developing trends that have, you know, kind of set up for us. As far as the New Zealand US dollar, kind of the same thing, except our 200 is just now kind of kissing the 720, hasn't jumped over just yet. But when it does, the expectation is that our rate will move down. So, you know, right now where we're sitting, we don't have an order here yet because we haven't pulled back far enough to drop our order on the 21 or on our 50. So we'd be at least looking for that before we could actually trade. But it's good. That's one that I'd kind of put as a medium type weighted trade and, you know, keep that in your journal for something that's developing. Now, as far as the US dollar CAD, rate just jumped over our 720. So we spent a little time above the 720, like half a day or so above the 720, but it's come down and checked it as a floor, which is a good thing. And now it's bouncing away. The other moving averages are in order to the upside. So we've got full trend, just not mature trend at this point in time. So we're just kind of waiting to see and make sure that the mature trend is going to develop. We get all the other moving averages over the 720, but it is US dollar CAD, it's dollar based. So my idea here might be to have my shorts on my 50 or my 100. Because if, you know, if we get that, then we may come down here and test down here in this 131 area, 131 even. So there's a bunch of pips there. There's almost, you know, 70 or 80 pips that we might be able to gain from that if we had our order, say, on that 50, you know, on the 50 moving average here, right? As far as the US dollar Swiss, we've got rate above or below, I'm sorry, below the 720. We've been hitting the 720. We've hit that, what, 3 or 4 times so far. 3 times in the last day or so. We've kind of come up and tested the 720 and not been able to break out. But we have moving averages that are starting to, starting a young trend now. We've got 200, 150, 21, and 8, all to the upside. We just happen to be underneath the 720. So we'll have to kind of just keep an eye on this one. I don't know that I would go trading that to the upside right now, just because of the, unless we get some type of stimulus plan or something like that, then, I think, I think that this will stay the same that it is. I don't think there's movement for it before the weekend. I don't think there's enough for us to really, risk our capital on that. Now, looking at the US dollar yen, we're trading below the 720. We got our move, our pullbacks almost to the 720. So we could have dropped an order here on this 200. We had room on the 100 and also on the 50, and probably each one of those trades would have been profitable for us. So this is a good trade that we want to watch out for. If we're looking at the moving averages right now, the 21's trying to jump back below the 100 and the 50. All of that's kind of consolidated together. The 8 is actually below, and the rate is fully below 720. Everything's below 720. So once all of this straightened out, I think we still have moved to the downside. So hopefully you're able to see some ideas here tonight, some trading ideas. Hopefully that was able to help you just a little bit. This is the last show for the week for the Trading the Tech show. So I hope that everybody has a great weekend and just be safe in whatever that you do. And then we'll be back here on Sunday night. Now, Sunday night, we're going to change the time for this particular show. Instead of 11 o'clock Eastern, it's going to be 10 o'clock Eastern. So that'll make it a little bit earlier for individuals who are on the West Coast, because some of them have indicated that they're tired, and I'm tired too. So it's a long day going from early in the morning to late at night, just a few hours separating it. So I think I'm going to go ahead and move it. We are going to go ahead and move it on Sunday night. You can be here at 10 o'clock Eastern time. That's 11 p.m. my time. All right. So thank you for coming and checking us out. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Everybody stays safe. And I hope your trading will continue to do well. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.